I had spent almost 18 years in a religious community, and during that time, I never went to a music concert. And right before I joined this religious community, I went to a Guns N' Roses concert. And I remember when I left the Guns N' Roses concert, my head was just ringing. And for probably the next day or two, all I could hear was Guns N' Roses. And so when I came back from religious community, my brother had invited me to go to a Fleetwood Mac concert. And I wasn't a big Fleetwood Mac fan, and I was like, ugh. And so I ended up going. And it was so agitating being there because there was just too much noise, actually more chill. But they decided to bring some electric guitarist there, and the noise was just crazy. And I promised myself that I would never go to another concert after that because it was just so full of the noise. And even like the day after, your ears are still ringing, and it was in the PPG Paints Arena. So it was just like, oh, you just couldn't get out. There's no way I could handle that. And I often wonder our souls, the way they were designed, our hearts, the way they were put together, our ears, and even our senses, the way the Lord creatively put them together. They're first and foremost created for silence. You think about it, like before, like the last 100 years or so, silence was like a part of the daily life. I did an interview the other day on my Exploring Catholicism with Manfred Honeck, who is the conductor of our Pittsburgh Symphony. He is from Austria. And he grew up very poor in the foothills of the Alps. And he said it was the silence of the Alps that taught him how to make music and how to bring music together. You see, when our hearts are full of silence, we're like that new wineskin that can allow God to live in us and be able to conform to whatever it is that He's doing. But the noise that we allow into our souls is like an old wineskin that can't be flexible to the way in which God is working in us. The image is quite stark, right? Like the old wineskin is already dried and conformed to the fermentation of old wine that doesn't ferment that much anymore. Whereas new wineskin, which is like goat skin, is basically what the wineskin was made of. When new wine gets poured into fresh wineskins, the new wine, it ferments a lot and it needs to expand and move and expand it. And so if new wine's poured into the old, it'll just burst the old because the leather is already dried. And I feel like that's so similar to today, where our souls, our hearts, our very senses were made like the new wineskins. But yet when we pour in the noise of the world, it's as if our souls shrivel up and get old. We weren't created for that. In fact, we are created to be temples of the Holy Spirit. And if you ever see some of the great churches around the world, like St. Peter's, these are these expansive churches, or when you walk into a Gothic church, even though the building is already set in limits, as if it's constantly expanding because it puts your heart, mind, and soul to just poof. Or if you go to the Alps or the Grand Canyon, you see the way God's created these natural cathedrals for us to expand. And part of that is our soul just being expanded by the silence of the Lord, the way He wants to speak to our heart, not manipulating us, but actually expanding us. The irony of Fleetwood Mac came out to me the other day when I realized that their lead singer said the best thing she ever did was take the life of her preborn baby, because that allowed her to have the freedom to make the music. That's where I realized how demonic it can be, how evil it can be, to absorb noise and stuff from people and from music that doesn't allow our hearts to freely expand in the love and the dignity of which we were given. So it's good for us to think about how to filter out those noises that come into our hearts, minds, and souls that can do damage to us, that can truly infect us. or make our hearts so old and shriveled up. And it has nothing to do with age. It has to do with what it is that's drying them up and making them shrink and not be able to be flexible to the expansive love of Jesus Christ in all of us. When you look at Mary, she's the ultimate example of being able to be flexible to the pathways of God and the ways in which God's music wants to work into her heart. I just want to finish with one little thought here, and that's that when you look in the Old Testament, there's this wonderful woman named Hannah. She's mentioned in 1 Samuel, and her heart was so full of the Lord that when she would worship, they thought she was drunk. In fact, Eli accuses her of that. But deep down, she just always wanted to she wanted to have a child and be able to offer that child to God. And so when she realizes that she's pregnant through this miraculous moment that God places with her and her husband, she sings the song. It's called Hannah's Song. And it's very similar to what Mary would sing in the Magnificat. And perhaps from the heart of Hannah and the heart of Mary, those two beautiful hymns are ways we can fill our heart, our hymns, with hymns that help us to be creative, to be expansive, to be flexible to the silent love of God.